and welcome back to the Eras of. We are so glad you are here with us again this week. I'm Pastor Megan.
And I'm Pastor Paige, and we are in the 1989 era.
Specifically, Taylor's version of the 1989 era.
Right? We got to do our episode last season, the week that 1989 came out. So
yes.
this time around, this was a different experience for you listening to the album, right?
Yeah, it was, because I felt like I could really get into the music more, because last time it was released on a Friday, and then last time we still shot our episodes on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't have that much time to sit with it.
Right.
To hear all the nuances and to hear how, not necessarily lyrics changed, but just how they sounded different now. So we got a full week with it this time, and I was starring a lot more songs going through. That's an Apple Music thing that you can star your favorites as you're listening to it. And a lot more ended up on my favorites.
I feel like, are you the person that would highlight every line in the book? I thought so. Favoriting all of them doesn't.
I didn't favorite all of them, but there were definitely ones that I added.
Okay. Well, so speaking of favorites.
Yes. But let's talk a little bit about this era first.
Yes.
Just in case we have some new listeners this season. So this era is light blue from 2014 to 2017. And some would argue August of 2023 to February of 2024, when she announced the Tortured Poets Department, is the next. But yes, so 2014 to 2017 specifically, this is when her girl squad came. She was seen more with her ladies and all that sort of stuff. We're finally getting our global pop sensation.
I'm so happy.
Yes. She's bolder. She's edgier. Some more subtle instances and innuendos of things, and we've officially stepped away from her Kanye drama for an album.
Right. Well, and I think here she wrote in the prologue for the for the Taylor's version about the haircut.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so right before 1989 comes out, she chops her hair off, right? Which I think we talked about last season. Like this is a thing.
Yes.
Right. You go and do something dramatic to your hair when your life is going through a huge change. The movie Legally Blonde.
Yes.
Elle Woods is stopped from doing that. Right.
Yes.
And instead gets her nails done, I think.
Exactly.
And makes a good friend.
Yes, she does. Yeah.
So that's this is a fun era for her because we get to see her leaning into that global pop sensation. She's growing up. She's a little older and is really, I think, coming into her own.
Yeah, and she's living in a brand new city.
Right.
She'd moved to New York, and that's sort of like the sound you get from this album. I mean, the title track is Welcome to New York.
Yeah.
And you get all of that and just so much pop goodness, danceable songs, scream along in your kitchen songs.
But also still the beautiful lyrics, right?
Yes,
that
and the
she
beautiful
writes.
love songs that, I still, every time I just love them so much. Yeah.
Well, 1989 is a special album for you, right? You listen to it throughout your CPE.
Yeah.
And so it has good memories for you.
Yeah.
And I know that it's been hard to say, well, what's the God verse for today?
Yes.
So
yes.
Did you find one? Was it hard? Was it easy? How was that for you this time?
So this was really hard. It took me maybe 2 or 3 listens of the album to sort of figure out what my God verse was going to be. Okay. I had mine from last time, which was, just the lyrics that spoke to you was "You are in love." And I was like, no, you can't. It'll pop up in a later season. So don't worry, folks. I'll still be talking about it nonstop. But this one, some of the other albums, you can sort of find hints of faith, hints of God a little bit more blatantly in them. Like the other first 3 albums so far had been easier. 4 albums have been easier to do. This one, like I said, it took me, I think, finally Friday to be able to figure out the song that I wanted. And it's This Love.
All right.
And I actually have 3 different lyrics.
Okay. Wow.
From this song specifically. And the first one comes from the chorus, and it's, this love is good, this love is bad, this love is alive, back from the dead.
Ooh, Easter.
Yes, but also for me, it was very much how our relationship and how my relationship with God has changed over time.
Okay.
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but I know it's always going to bring me back.
I love it.
It's, as you all have, you've been listening since season 1, Pastor Paige and I talked a lot about our grief process with losing separate parents. It was good, it was bad when Dad died, but I came back and it brought me back to life. The next line is, tossing, turning, struggled through the night with someone new. There are many nights where I toss and turn because of things that have gone on during the day, things that are on my plate that I either didn't get to or didn't accomplish what I thought I was going to do, or didn't do as well as I probably should have done with something. And you struggle through the night just finally giving it over to God. Mm-hmm. And there are many nights where I'll lay in bed and I'm like, okay, God, this is yours. If I'm supposed to pick it up again in the morning, it'll be the first thing on my mind.
All right.
And there are some mornings where it's like, keep going on, nothing. And then there'll be mornings where it is the first thing because you need to fix this. You need to keep doing this. And then, so the last one is, in losing grip on sinking ships, you showed up just in time. And I probably could have just done the you showed up just in time for everything, because for a long time I felt like I was walking alone. Like God wasn't with me, but I knew God was.
Right.
Now I know God was, post first years of Dad's death, I now know. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you showed up just when I needed you.
Right.
But I feel like God's in the back going, I was always here.
Right. Right.
Like, I never left. You just didn't see me or acknowledge that I was here. So in losing grip on sinking ships, you showed up just in time. So yeah, for a song that's definitely not about God.
Right.
I definitely found a lot of God in this, and I found a lot of me in the song too. So,
I love it. Love it.
So you have a couple.
Yeah. The first is from Clean, and we'll come back to Clean later on in our conversation. Will. As I was listening to it, it took me, I was putting them in today, right? And some of that is I'd like to marinate on things, right? So I was letting it marinate. And as I was reading the lyrics, because we were working on other stuff with it, hit me the part of it where she says, and the rain came pouring down when I was drowning. That's when I could finally breathe. Yeah. And there's something about my relationship with God, lots of people's relationship with God, that it's like what you just said, right? You showed up just in time. It's sometimes when we are just buried that we can see God again.
Yeah.
We don't always need God when things are good. We do, but we don't pay it. We don't think about it as much, right? Yeah. It's when things are crumbling and difficult that we find ourselves turning back to God. So there was something about that, like when I was drowning, that's when I could finally breathe, that I really liked.
Yeah.
But the other one was actually my first one, and it's going to serve as our transition into our stories.
Yes.
Right? So last week, we talked about your call story and the scripture passage that ties you to your call, right? And that is the burning bush.
Yes.
Well, this week we get to do mine, which comes in the book of 1 Samuel. So to give you a quick overview where we are, we're going to jump ahead now. We have met these judges who were the people that God appointed to care for the people in their new promised land. And the person that we're going to talk about was the last judge.
Yeah.
He was the last person God appointed as a judge. His name was Samuel. So in 1 Samuel, we hear his call story. And Samuel is born to a woman named Hannah who deeply desires a child and struggles. And so is like, God, give me a child and I will dedicate him to you.
Yeah.
So all the things, right? She gives birth to Samuel. He is dedicated to the temple, left in the care, when he comes to a certain age, left in the care of Eli.
Mm-hmm.
And one night, Samuel, who's a relatively young boy,
mm-hmm.
here is sleeping and hears the voice of God.
Yeah.
He wakes up. He runs to Eli. Yes, master. What do you need?
Mm-hmm.
Eli's like, well, I didn't call you. Why are you waking me up?
Yeah.
Right.
An important thing, Eli was also hard of hearing and hard of sight.
Yes. I always forget that part.
And it's an important part of the story because continue.
Right. So again, he hears it again.
Mm-hmm.
Samuel hears this voice calling him and gets out, runs to his master. Hey, what do you need? What do you need? How can I help you? Oh, I'm good. What? I didn't call you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's at that point, it's at the second or third time
mm-hmm.
where Eli says to Samuel, well, it's not me, so it's obviously God.
Yeah.
So when you're called again, I want you to listen and respond and say,
mm-hmm.
here I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, sleeping, God's voice, he now knows it's God.
Mm-hmm.
Here am I, Lord.
Yeah.
And that story, when I read it, as I was discerning my call to the ministry, was one I don't think I knew the story well mm-hmm. as a child or a young person, and was like, oh, that's my story. And that's my story because I needed someone else to tell me it was God.
Mm-hmm.
I needed someone else to say, hey, that's God calling you.
Yeah.
Excuse me, what? My pastor and now dear friend who helped me see that actually told me later that she could see it right away in me, mm-hmm. that God was doing something. And although I'm actually older than her by like a few months, she's my Eli, right? And actually by the time this episode comes out, we will be after her birthday. So happy belated birthday, Laura.
Yes.
And thank you for that. So my song that I picked ties mm-hmm. to that story a little bit. And mm-hmm. it's from Say Don't Go. And I have sort of a different view on this one because I think it's God's view of me, mm-hmm. not my view of God.
Yeah.
Which is, I've known it from the very start.
Mm-hmm.
We're a shot in the darkest dark.
Yeah.
And partially that call at night piece.
Yeah.
But that my call has been happening since I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me till I was 30 to go to seminary, right? Yeah. So God has always known. It mm-hmm. just took me a while to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
So this story is a season, a time of transition.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, Samuel will be the last judge over Israel. And I think about 1989, and part of the reason that we were here, right, mm-hmm. in the storytelling is because this is a time of change for Taylor.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a time of change for God's relationship with their people.
Yes.
So after Samuel is called, he mm-hmm. does his judge thing. And it takes like 5 chapters of his book,
mm-hmm.
Of 1 Samuel. And then in 1 Samuel 8.
Yeah.
The people are like, hey, Samuel, your kids aren't going to be good judges, is essentially like mm-hmm. the messaging. Instead of the new judge, could we have a king? Everybody else has a king.
Yeah. Why can't we have that?
Right. Why can't we be like everybody else?
Because clearly Pharaoh, who was a king, worked out great before. So let's do that again.
Right. Let's be like everybody else. And God relents, right? God's like, okay, I'll give you a king.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I don't think Taylor didn't relent to pop, right? I think she was trying to get there. She was on that journey the whole time. But so that transition piece.
Yeah.
And I realized I jumped ahead. There's another song for Samuel's call.
Yeah.
Not just the verse I picked. But in You Are in Love.
Yes.
I love this. You can hear it in the silence and you can see it with the lights out, right? Mm-hmm. The description of love. And so it just made me think about Samuel, in bed hearing God's voice in the dark.
How many songs did I give to Moses' call story? So Samuel's allowed to have several as well.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are in this story. The people say, hey, God, give us a king.
Mm-hmm.
God's like, oh, all right.
Yes.
Meet this dude, Saul.
And you're like,
Yeah. Meet Saul. Saul is the first king over the people of Israel. And Saul's like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes. But he doesn't do exactly what God wants him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so God says, I'm done with you.
Next.
Right. Thank you. Next. Oh, wrong artist.
Yes.
But
still, great pop artist.
Right.
So,
or is the blank space?
Yes, I think it is blank space.
Right. A little bit.
I've got a blank space, babe.
I'll write your name. Right.
Yep.
So God realizes that Saul's not the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And Samuel does too. So God sends Samuel out to find this person that he knows exists. And we don't have songs for this part, but you've got to hear this part of the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So God sends Samuel out to Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
And we meet all of Jesse's sons, and they choose the young. God is calling the youngest.
Yeah.
Now, there's this thing that happens throughout the Old Testament that when this was pointed out to me, it like blew my mind.
Okay.
So we told you a little bit about like the overview history of the Israelite people.
Yes.
Eventually, they will split into two kingdoms.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is smaller. The other one is bigger.
Yeah.
The bigger one gets taken over by another nation before the smaller one. The smaller one lasts longer. The smaller one is where Jerusalem is.
Yeah.
It's called Judah, which is where we get Jews.
Yep.
Right? And so there's all of these stories, and we've told you several of them, where the younger brother comes out on top.
Of course.
And I was like, oh, they did that on... I mean, I'm not saying the stories aren't real or true, but they highlight these stories on purpose. Because how is it that the younger brother survived?
Yeah.
Longer than the older brother, right? Like the smaller kingdom lasted longer than the big kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things we see here, right? Like, so David comes in, he's the youngest. He is picked and anointed. He's a young boy. He is anointed as king, but does not become king.
Correct.
Right? It's like, well, it's like both of us, right? We're called to ministry, but it takes time before we're ready.
Yeah.
Right? We have to do seminary, we have to do our studies and
all the things.
All the
processes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so David is anointed as king and also begins to serve Saul. He's a musician, plays music for the king, all of these things.
That's how we get a lot of the Psalms.
Right. According to tradition.
Yes.
But David also joins the army. And that's when he has an encounter. Do you want to tell people what happens to him when he's in the army?
So David and Goliath is fantastic. You know, he's off fighting and, you know, it's this huge, Goliath is this huge giant type figure and it's wildest dreams. He's so tall, not handsome as hell.
Actually, I think that he was. I think part of the intimidation of Goliath was that he was like not just massive, but powerful.
Yes.
And like people were attracted to that power.
Yeah, it's so Goliath of Gath, whose height was 4 cubits and a span, had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail. The weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. He had the greaves of bronze on his legs and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. I mean, we get like 10 verses of just the description of all that Goliath is wearing.
Right. He's so maybe we should have picked style.
yes, you know, and all this, and you know, it's you just need to fight him, David. It's fine, no big deal. And then we get the slingshot. You know, like this very simple thing, and I think that's really neat because Taylor uses the simplest thing, her words,
right,
as her slingshot, as her stone to fight all of the things that are up against her,
right,
that are so tall and, you know, handsome. All the things. I mean, so Wildest Dreams is definitely a David and Goliath type of thing.
When we started to listen to the album last week, we were together and it was like, oh, he's so tall and handsome. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
That's Goliath,
It
right?
It is. Yes. Yes.
So this David's story continues.
Mm-hmm.
He slays Goliath. This makes him like a celebrity.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Like usually when you think of David, you think of David and Goliath.
Right.
For sure is one of the first stories of him. Yeah.
And he's like now kind of outshines Saul in this moment because everybody else was afraid to, confront this giant man.
Yeah.
And he still serves Saul. He still sings to him. And in doing so, he becomes friends with Saul's children. Mm-hmm. He marries one of Saul's daughters.
Yes.
Michal, I believe is how you say it.
Yes.
And he becomes like best buddies with Jonathan. Mm-hmm. At least best buddies is how it's usually presented.
Uh-huh.
Could it be something?
Who knows?
It be something else? Who knows? But as I was listening to the album and we came to the bonus track from the Target version, which is Sweeter Than Fiction.
Yes.
I kept thinking about how that song is about that person that you're cheering on, right? So we both have people we're no longer close with. Mm-hmm. I still want the best in their lives. Like I'm cheering them on, right? Uh-huh. They may not be my people right now.
Exactly. But they were at one point.
And I want to
still want good things for them. So
right. And so I feel that's part of what Sweeter Than Fiction is about to me, where it's got that line, I'll be one of the many saying, look at you now. Look at you now. Yeah. I'll be one of the many saying, you made us proud. Yeah. You made us proud. And there's a moment with Saul or with David and Jonathan where Jonathan comes to David and is like, dude, my dad wants to kill you. And you got to get out of here. And there's a tender moment between these two men as they part ways. And Jonathan says, go in peace, because the two of us made a solemn pledge in the Lord's name when we said, the Lord is witness between us and our descendants forever. Yeah. And so I love that bond that's there between them. So.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. But I also have a David song too.
Yeah. What's your David song? Yeah.
So, there are a lot of great vault tracks on this. We had the Sweeter Than Fiction, which we could say is a vault track, although it wasn't on all of the albums. But there was also another one, Suburban Legends.
Yes, I love that song.
It's such a good song. It's one of the ones that I favorited as we were listening. I think I favorited all the vault tracks this time around. But not so much the context of the song, but I think when you think of the Old Testament, one of the couple people you first think of Abraham, you think of Moses, you think of David. And I'm like, Suburban Legend. Okay, he's someone that you
born David, to be a suburban legend, right?
David and Goliath. That is for sure one of the first stories you ever tell about David. Right. And part of it sounds sort of like, those urban legends that people used to have, like you don't flash your headlights at someone if they don't have their headlights on because, oh yeah, it's a whole.
Oh, I remember that one. Okay.
Yeah, from like when all those movies came out in the 90s or whatever.
I don't watch those movies, but I hear you.
I did, and now I don't. Yeah. I watched them then, but yeah, so Suburban Legends to me was very David coded of, you were born to be a suburban legend. You were born to be this king. You were anointed at such a young age for this. So yeah.
I love that. I think that's such a good one for him. And the stories of David, some of them we don't tell a lot, right? No. Like the idea that Saul wanted to kill David is a whole thing. Yeah. And again, early in our listening to the album, we get to I Know Places. Yes. And I was like, oh, it's David running from Saul in the desert. And he hides in the desert from the king who he's supposed to replace. And eventually, David sort of comes of age, or the people like David so much because he slayed Goliath, because he helped protect them from the Philistines, that they begin to follow him more and more. And eventually God tells Saul, you're out. Yeah. You're done. Yeah. In the midst of all of that, Samuel dies. And so Samuel and Saul had a special relationship. And we're going to talk about some of these people where most of the kings of the nation of Judah, and then the nation that's now the nation of Israel is the other kingdom. Right now, we're still one. They're one kingdom right now. There's often someone whose job it is to talk to the king and be like, are you sure about that? Or or to be a mediator between the king and God.
Yeah. An advisor, sort of.
An advisor. And they're called prophets.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them.
So many. And they're also minor prophets.
There are minor and major and all of that, right? And we'll get to more of those. And we'll talk a little bit about them a little later in this episode even. But Samuel was essentially Saul's prophet. And so now Saul is like, God has abandoned me. And I'm feeling some bad blood.
God doesn't want me to be here anymore.
Right?
Yeah.
But there's a moment in Bad Blood. The line is, if you live like that, you live with ghosts. And there's this great story about Saul. This is another one. I don't think it gets told enough. I think it doesn't get told enough because there's a woman at the center of it.
A woman at the center in the Old Testament? How dare you?
I know. And there's a moment in the story where Saul is like, pulling my hair out. And Samuel was the person who helped me talk to God.
Yeah.
I need to talk to Samuel. Samuel's dead. So Saul goes to consult a medium. She's also known as the Witch of Endor. And I love this.
Yes.
And
sounds very Tolkienish.
It does, right? Or like Star Wars even, right? You know. So Saul goes to her. First of all, he disguises himself because Lord knows the king / former king shouldn't be talking to, this woman in Endor.
A crazy woman or whatever.
Yeah. Right. And she immediately knows who he is. She's like, how dare you deceive me? Yeah. So she stands up to him, but then she does what he asks. And Samuel comes back from the dead as a ghost. This is the Bad Blood time.
Yes.
And is like, why do you ask me? Since the Lord has turned away from you and has become your enemy. I love it, right? Yeah. The Lord has done to you exactly what he spoke through me. The Lord has ripped the kingdom out of your hands and given it to your friend David.
Yes.
Like, okay then.
Yeah, you didn't believe me when I was alive. Maybe you'll believe me now that I'm super dead.
Super dead.
Super dead. You had to contact me from the grave.
Right.
But yet you still don't believe this. Like, yeah, Bad Blood.
Bad Blood. It is that relationship, right? Yes. And even between Saul and David, right? Like there's a lot of bad blood there.
Yeah.
So for me, that was and when I heard that when you live like, that you live with ghosts, I was like, oh,
yeah,
that story.
So,
the Bible has so much of everything, right?
Yes, it does. It has so much.
So we mentioned prophets.
Yes.
And most of the kings have a prophet that they relate to. There's Samuel, and then there's Nathan, who was David's prophet. And there's more. We'll talk about many of them as we come along. But their job is to tell people things they don't want to hear. And so, what song do we give them? What do you think?
Is it over now? No.
No.
Oh, there are so many. Shake It Off.
Shake It Off.
Shake It Off.
Right, because the prophets are going to say things people aren't going to like, right?
Exactly. Yes. Just shake it off. Shake it off.
Don't we ever feel like that? We give a sermon and it's like I had to say something I didn't want to say, but it needed to be said.
Yeah. And the person you wanted to say it to was not even in church that Sunday. And you're just like,
but we live stream.
But we do. We live stream, and so it's fine. But still, you're just like, come on.
Right?
Shake it off.
So I think Shake It Off is the perfect song for our prophets who just need to they got to shake it off.
Yes.
They got to say what they got to say, and they got to shake it off. But Was It Over is a song I tied to a prophetic moment.
Yes.
And it's the line where she says, you dreamed of my mouth before I called you a lying traitor.
Yes.
So David is an imperfect and flawed human being, like all of us.
Yes.
David does some truly atrocious things.
Yes.
Following one of the most atrocious things that he does
Yes.
And I feel like we got to tell it very quickly.
Yes.
And we'll come back to it, I think, in a later season.
Probably, yeah.
But David decides to steal a woman from her husband.
Haven't we already had the 10 Commandments? So that's the thing you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. But the rules don't apply to him though, do they?
Because he's a king, right? Right. He covets her. He decides he wants her.
That's a whole commandment.
He forces her to sleep with him.
Mm-hmm.
There's a power dynamic issue here.
Yes.
There's no way. Her name is Bathsheba.
Yeah.
There's no way Bathsheba could say no to David.
Yeah.
So he forcibly sleeps with her.
Mm-hmm.
And she becomes pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. So David calls her husband is a soldier.
Yeah.
Fighting in David's army, right?
Uh-huh.
Calls the soldier back, tries to get the soldier to sleep with his wife. But the soldier refuses. He's like, my comrades are out there on the front line and I'm home. You want me to have a conjugal? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So Uriah, the Hittite, refuses to sleep with his wife. So David, being a completely reasonable man, has Uriah killed on the front line. And then he ostensibly comforts Uriah's widow.
In a horizontal position?
Uh-huh. After they've already done that once.
Yeah.
So now she's pregnant and it's okay. It's not okay.
Yeah, it's not okay.
I hate this story.
Uh-huh.
And I appreciate in it Nathan, his prophet's response.
Yes.
Nathan goes to David and says, you're going to lose this child.
Mm-hmm.
This child will not come to fruition.
Yeah.
But before that tells him a parable about a man who has every sheep that one could ever need, who then goes to the poorest man in town and takes his sheep.
Huh.
What would you do to that man? Nathan says to David. And David's like, well, that'd be the worst. And Nathan literally says to David, and this is almost a direct quote,
yeah,
you are that man.
Yes.
And that idea of Nathan being so direct with David makes me think about that. You dreamed of my mouth before I called you a lying traitor.
He said to Nathan, as the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. He shall restore the lamb fourfold before he did this thing, and because he had no pity. Nathan said to David, you are the man. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I anointed your king over Israel.
Right?
You are the man. Yeah. Good job, David.
Right?
Very sarcastically said.
Uh-huh. So David loses a child. David is contrite. David is heartbroken. One tradition about the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd and I shall not want, is that David wrote that in his grief. A psalm that we'll talk about later is another one that's attributed to David and is often attributed to this season of grief where he loses this child. He and Bathsheba have another child whose name is Solomon, who will become the next king over Israel after David. So in 2.5 seconds, that's the story of David and some of the things that he does.
Yes.
And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about him. I don't think we're done with David. And we're barely starting on Solomon.
Exactly.
So I had one Solomon song.
Okay.
Before we get to our stuff that's out of timeline.
Yes.
And that is New Romantics.
Yeah.
David wants to build a temple for God. A place for God to basically live, like literally God's house. Not like the church, the house of God. No, like literally God's house. David is told he's not going to do it. Some of this, like, you're not always a good dude stuff is why. But your son will. Mm-hmm. And so I kept thinking about that in New Romantics, right? Where they talk about building, things. And so I was like, oh, yeah. Solomon, he builds the temple. Build a
castle out of all the bricks they threw at me.
That's it. Thank you.
You're
for
welcome.
The line.
You're welcome.
So we shared with you about talking about the timeline, where we are in the story. And so we want to make sure that we let you know when we're going to step away from our timeline and look at things that maybe happened before or things that will come later. So you had something that will happen before in one of our songs.
Yes. Or that's already happened.
Right. Yes.
Rather. Yes. So as I was re-listening to 1989, I did the snarky this time with Lot and his wife. And this is from Genesis 19.
Okay.
And the story is, that they are leaving and, Lot has told his wife, you can't look back. We have to leave. We can't. You need to leave the old things behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're going along great. And then all of a sudden, his wife turns around. And okay, sure, that sounds terrible. But she gets turned into a pillar of salt. Because she defied what was said and what needed to happen. And so for me, I had one song, but then as we were re-listening to this, as we were doing our notes and everything earlier. So my first one is Say Don't Go.
Mm-hmm.
Of Lot going, just don't go. Why are you turning around?
Right.
But then my other one was I wish you would. I wish you would stay. I wish you would do this.
Right.
Or all you had to do was stay.
Right. Oh my gosh.
So Lot and his wife have several songs. But yeah, so that was my back.
You're going backwards one. All right.
Yes. And did you have any going backwards?
Well, I did have one. And it's just, I'll briefly mention it. Yeah. The song Clean.
Yes.
And we talked about this a little bit in the first season about clean in the Bible. And this particularly comes from the Old Testament, where there are all of these laws about what makes you pure and impure. And like, I'll use this example. If you are in a certain part of your cycle, ladies, you would be unclean.
And you'd have to go live in a tent.
And you have to go live in a tent, which sometimes sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah, there's a really good book called The Red Tent that talks about the whole entire, it's a biblical book that someone has written, and it's also a movie as well.
All right. Yeah. And
Nancy Bueller highly recommends it.
All right. There we go. I've not read it. I've heard of it, but I've not read it. So you then would have to be bathed in a certain way in order to be considered clean again.
Yeah.
Right. So the song Clean always makes me think about that.
Yes.
So you had one that we both have a few that jump ahead.
Yes. So this one, we were listening to it this afternoon, and I immediately was like, oh, it's Jonah. But it's Jonah to God and God to Jonah.
Well, so why don't you want to tell the Jonah story briefly?
So Jonah, God tells Jonah to go do things, and Jonah's like, actually, I'd rather not. And God's like, no, really, you need to go do these things. I'm good, thanks. And so the story goes that Jonah gets put in the belly of a whale.
He dives out of a ship that's in a storm because he's running away from God, right? And ends up.
Which I feel also Jonah could very much be part of my call story of me just to keep running away from all the things God was saying that you needed to do.
Right.
But so he dives into the ocean, and God's like, you think you can get away from me? I'm going to have this huge whale swallow you whole, and you're just going to chill in the belly for a while till you think about what you've done.
We might need to come back to this one next week.
Yes, yes. So now that we don't talk is definitely a Jonah and the whale moment. Sort of the, welp, you don't want to listen to me. These are all the things that I can't ask you about because, we don't talk anymore.
Well, and it works not just for that moment in that story, but at the end, right? Like Jonah gets vomited up, literally, by the whale.
Yes.
And ends up in this city he didn't want to go to. And the people like repent and are saved and blah, blah, blah. And then Jonah goes and sits under a bush and is like, seriously?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? And he's mad at God about it. It's
because
great.
all you had to do was talk.
Right.
Or listen. So yeah, so
I love
that
it.
was my definitely the now that we don't talk was my Jonah and the whale and that whole Jonah moment.
I love it.
Yes. So what is your jump ahead?
We jumped ahead very briefly to Elijah. He's a later prophet. And there were two moments for me with Elijah. One is there's this great scene where Elijah's really super stressed and he's been doing some hard stuff. And I'm sure we'll tell more of that story.
Yeah.
In a later episode. But he's having a real bad day. And God tells him to eat something and go take a nap. Like reset. But Elijah wants to hear from God. And he tries to listen for God in the thunder. And he tries to listen for God in the roaring wind and in the water, I think. And in the end, God speaks to him in the still small voice. You can hear it in the silence.
Yeah.
And so there was that.
And that you are in love.
And you are in love. Thank you. And then the other is Back to Say Don't Go.
Such a good song.
It is. And
yes.
There's a great scene at the end of Elijah's ministry where he's passing on his work to another prophet whose name is Elisha. And Elisha doesn't want Elijah to go. He's like, no, don't go. Yeah. I would stay forever if you would say don't go.
And that's pretty much what the story is. It's no, you should stay here. No, but I'm going to keep following you. Literally, please stay here. No, I'm going to keep coming with you. You cannot go where I'm going. But please let me keep. Yeah.
Right. And then eventually, right, Elijah's literally taken up in a chariot.
Yes, because then he couldn't follow.
Right. Because Elijah just wouldn't, or Elisha wouldn't like leave him alone.
Yeah.
So that was another one that I thought about. And that's coming, that again, that leaps ahead.
Yes.
Beyond a whole bunch of stuff.
Yes. But don't worry, we will get back to all that stuff. But like we've said, there are going to be songs that are going to bring up other things and stories that we've already talked about. So,
join us.
Enjoy our flash forwards and our flashbacks.
Well, and frankly, we talked about this before about how important it is for us that you all hear this story. Part of the work we're doing is about how we read the Bible and how we understand it. And so that's actually been a really fun part of it because I'm a total nerd.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking about a previous episode that we have a colleague who calls me the professor. And I was like, oh yeah, this is why.
Yeah, just wait.
Calls me the professor.
Yeah.
But
before we dive deeper into that, because we have a couple more things that we want to talk about. But as always, do you have a verse for God this era?
I mean, look, I wasn't super snarky in our last episode.
Yeah, it was your turn again.
It was, so it's my turn again to be snarky. And also, I think it's a perfect fit, honestly, right? So we kind of alluded to it earlier.
Yes.
We're in a new era. God is doing something different. And so it's going to be forever or it's going to go down in flames. Blank space.
Blank space for sure.
Blank space, right? Like, but really, like, God's going, this king thing is either going to be forever or it's going to go down in flames.
Yeah, and then I'm going to send you my son who you think is going to be the king, isn't it? But it's a king in a totally different way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So that was mine. What about you?
The best people in life are free.
All right.
The New Romantics, because, these are all the people that made it to the promised land.
Right.
These, as we talked about last episode, there was a whole group of them that were not allowed to cross over to the promised land because they were stuck in their ways.
Right.
So this is the best people.
All right.
Are free because they listen to God for now.
Right. I was like, are these really the best people? We just talked about the worst part of David's life and his story.
Best people in this context.
There we go. Well, no, and I think it's actually for me the free part, right? Yeah. When I think about the freedom of following God in our lives and the freedom to do it and the freedom of the people who've gotten out of Egypt and can say like, God, give us a king.
Yeah. Saying like, please, this is what we would like. Can we try this?
Can we give it a shot? It's going to be forever. It's going to go down in flames.
Yeah. Yeah. We're on covenant version 3 now. So can we try this now?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But then I don't know if you noticed, I think we had a place that we missed a faith God reference.
We did. And did we miss it or did we leave it out intentionally?
I'm going to go with both.
I think so.
And because as I was listening to it, all of a sudden I was like, oh, add it to the notes.
Right.
And it's so now that we don't talk, I feel like this episode has been very vault track heavy, which is great because we didn't have them as much last season because we weren't as familiar with them. And it's really really at the beginning of the song, it's you part the crowd like the Red Sea.
And I love it.
I was like, yeah, there's our Moses shout out.
Right.
Thanks, Tay.
Because we haven't talked about Moses this episode. So it makes it like the first one so far. Maybe we didn't talk about Moses in debut, but
probably. Yeah. Yeah. So thanks, Tay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm not sure if we did Wildest Dreams or not. I can't remember.
Right. Where it says, heaven can't help me now.
Yeah.
But because there's a line in blank space after it's going to be forever, it's going to go down in flames, has the line about madness. I'm going to get it wrong. Madness, heaven, hell, madness, sin.
Heaven can't help me now.
Well, no, in blank space too. There's a heaven, hell reference. But I think we think about, right, like, heaven as a reference for God, right?
Yeah.
Like even all of the good of the world and creation can't help me survive this, which may have been how David felt when he flung the thing at Goliath.
Or did his other things.
Well, yeah.
You know.
So David's story is tough.
It is. It is.
A lot of people will talk about, God still uses really flawed people. And that is so true.
Yes.
And yeah, God takes us when we're flawed and wants to keep working on us.
Yes.
And our track 5 story.
Yes.
So what song is track 5?
All you had to do was stay.
Okay.
And originally you would think it's a huge step away from what she's done in the past. But as I was scrolling Instagram this morning, for some reason, one of the little suggested videos was Taylor talking about this song.
Really?
And it came to her in a dream.
Wow.
But the part of where in one of the choruses, she does the higher stay. And she's like, in this dream, the guy that this song's about came to my door. And instead of wanting to say, all you had to do was stay, I don't need you anymore. It was the stay.
Wow.
I want you to stay. And so I was like, oh, that completely changes how this song is that she wanted it to be that powerful thing of saying, literally all you had to do was stay.
Right.
That's
the bar is that low.
The bar is on the ground.
Right.
And you didn't even do that.
Yeah.
And then to have that moment where she was like, in my dream, he came back and I wanted to tell him, I'm better off without you. But all I said was stay.
Yeah.
And so like people have said that this track 5 is like the worst track 5 is it doesn't fit in everything else of, you know, the specific meaning, the sad, melodramatic. It's a more upbeat track 5. But I think when you hear that story, you can hear her saying, I wanted it to be that.
Right.
But it wasn't.
Right. That imagination, that desire for it to be something other.
And you came up with a great story to go along with this.
Yeah. So for me, we told you a little bit. I told you earlier about Saul and David. Yeah. Right. That's the track 5 in the 1989 era here.
Yes,
right. That
for sure.
God says to Saul, like, all I need you to do is do what I tell you. And he doesn't.
No.
Right. And I think in a way God changes the way he works with David.
Mm-hmm.
Like that God lets David be a little more flawed.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe the reins were too tight on Saul or something, right?
Yeah.
But that big transition, and it's such a huge shift from the way that, you know, Saul is king is much more of a like political type of a thing, whereas, you know, David grows up with the king, learns how to be king, and is also a warrior and all of these things, right? So David also is a much more well-rounded character than Saul, because Saul's kind of a like not a villain, but not a villain either.
Yeah, an anti-hero?
Maybe. Ooh. Well, we'll have to put that in our notes on Midnights.
Yes.
So that for me, that's the track 5 here in God's 1989
Very
era,
much so.
In 1st and 2nd Samuel.
Yeah.
Which is where we're hanging out right now.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
What's next?
Reputation.
Are you excited?
I'm so excited. You know, part of me was really, really hoping we would have a new Taylor's version.
Right. Rep TV, but we won't. Reputation is such a powerful album too.
It is.
And so
yeah.
I'm really excited to see what it calls forth for us. And I'm really wondering, and I'm going to say this now, if it's going to lead us out of the timeline.
Ooh.
Like I'm wondering if it's gonna, this episode might be different, because it might call a bunch of stories that aren't right within the timeline where we are.
Which makes sense, because that's sort of what Reputation is.
Right.
Because there will be no explanation. Only reputation.
But before
we jump ahead,
right? Before Reputation,
really far,
we come to the point in the episode where I forget what we're doing.
So we will always have our Sunday question for you with your 1989 God story, your verse for your relationship with God, what you think the God verse song is for this era, and of course, do you think it's all Saul and David for track 5, or are there other people or other stories that need to go in there as well? So there's what's coming next, the things to expect. We're trying to do a little bit more social media stuff. So the weeks that we don't have a new episode for you, we have some other fun things to post for you. So make sure you check our Instagram and our Facebook for all of those. You know, make sure you like, comment, share, review on Apple Music. We're officially back on Spotify,
right? Yep.
YouTube, Podbean, and of course you can always find all of that and so much more on our website, pastorswifties.com, where you can comment, email us,
reach out.
And
you know, again, if you share with us your verse or what you think the track 5 is, we would love to send you one of our new stickers.
Yes.
So let us know. We'd love to share one.
Yeah.
So
they're slowly making their way out into the world.
Yes.
So.
Or if you know either one of us, message us and we'd love to send you a sticker.
Yeah. So we'll be happy to do that.
We come to our Swift song, and this is, hope you don't mind me sharing this, but this is the one that Megan came up with. So most of them I've made the tie, but Megan goes, I've got it. And I go,
I may have said it really loud in the library last week too. It was, sorry, Seville.
It was great. It was so funny. But she goes, I pause and I go, oh, it's clean. And Psalm 51, isn't it? She was like, yes.
I'm like, we're on the same wavelength.
It's great. And we're really excited. We're going to do something different this time around.
Yeah, we're really excited for this.
I've loved sharing these with you. It's been so fun to offer a new view into the Psalms.
It is.
And one of the things that we've done is we've read the Psalm passages from a couple of different Bible translations.
Yes.
We've used the New Revised Standard Version, which is the sort of standard scriptural version in the academic world, particularly in mainline churches.
Yes.
We also have used the Common English Bible, which you heard from in our last episode.
Yes.
It's a new translation done by some of the same people that just kind of updated the language. For example, it has contractions like don'ts, which New Revised Standard does not.
Yeah.
But today we're going to share from the New Revised Standard, but we're also, going to share from the Message Paraphrase. Yes. This was done by a pastor named Eugene Peterson.
It's amazing.
And he took scripture, the whole thing.
The whole of the thing.
And rephrased it in ways, in language that's more familiar. So we are going to use the Message Paraphrase of Psalm 51 along with our lyrics. And the Message Paraphrase is going to be a transition from Taylor's lyrics to the New Revised Standard version.
And what's going to be really neat, we hope, when we've practiced it, it sounds really neat, is Paige will read the lyrics. And then together we will read the Message version, and then I will read the NRSV. So you can sort of listen to it like that. If it helps to close your eyes, please, if you are driving, do not close your eyes. Let me just put it that way.
But we hope that this actually might be a prayerful experience.
Yes. Yeah, and the same with the other times that we've done our Swift Psalms. This, I think, Paige said, has been one of our favorite things to do this time, when we're already starting to think of what we're going to do in this part for our future seasons.
Yes.
Because this is just as fun as everything else. And I know we both have favorite Psalms that we're sort of like, what song can we find with this one?
Right.
That we're already starting to think about. Thankfully, we have 6 more albums
to do.
Yes.
So, and then one that's going to, I think, tie closely to the Psalms. Anyway.
Yeah.
Previews. I don't know. That's my prediction.
Yes. We will see.
We will see. So, friends, here is Clean by Taylor Swift and Psalm 51.
Yes.
The drought was the very worst. When the flowers that we'd grown together died of thirst, it was months and months of back and forth. You're still all over me, like a wine-stained dress I can't wear anymore. Scrub away my guilt. Soak out my sins in your laundry. I know how bad I've been. My sins are staring me down.
Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me.
Hung my head as I lost the war, and the sky turned black like a perfect storm. You're the one I violated, and you've seen it all, seen the full extent of my evil. You have all the facts before you. Whatever you decide about me is fair.
Against you, you alone I have sinned and done what is evil in your sight, so that you are justified in your sentence and blameless when you pass judgment.
So I punched a hole in the roof. Let the flood carry away all the pictures of you. The water filled my lungs. I screamed so loud, but no one heard a thing. What you're after is truth from the inside out. Enter me, then conceive a new, true life. Tune me in to foot-tapping songs. Set these once broken bones to dancing. Don't look too closely for blemishes. Give me a clean bill of health.
You desire truth in the inward being. Therefore, teach me wisdom in my secret heart. Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones that you have crushed rejoice. Hide your face from my sins and blot out all my iniquities.
And by morning, gone was any trace of you. I think I am finally clean. God, make a fresh start in me. Shape a Genesis week from the chaos of my life.
Create in me a clean heart, O God, and put a new and right spirit within me.
10 months sober, I must admit, just because you're clean, don't mean you don't miss it. 10 months older, I won't give in. Now that I'm clean, I'm never going to risk it. Commute my death sentence, God, my salvation, God, and I'll sing anthems to your life-giving ways. Unbutton my lips, dear God. I'll let loose with your praise. Going through the motions doesn't please you.
A flawless performance is nothing to you. Deliver me from bloodshed, O God of my salvation, and my tongue will sing aloud of your deliverance. O Lord, open my lips, and my mouth will declare your praise. For you have no delight in sacrifice. If I were to give a burnt offering, you would not be pleased.
Rain came pouring down. When I was drowning, that's when I could finally breathe. And by morning, gone was any trace of you. I think I'm finally clean. I learned God worship when my pride was shattered. Heart-shattered lives ready for love. Don't for a moment escape God's notice.
The sacrifice acceptable to God is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. O God, you will not despise.
May God create in you a clean heart, that you may know the love of God, because you never escape God's notice.
No, you don't. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.